little lovely friends out there in YouTube land. I want to wish you guys a Merry Christmas. We're still a couple weeks away from Christmas, but Merry Christmas anyway. This is my Christmas tag. This Christmas tag is going to be different from other Christmas tags because we're not going down a list of questions that you got to answer. This little tag is a kind of a get to know you type of a tag because I thought it would be very special that we shared our Christmas memories as well as our Christmas traditions, and you know, going all the way back into childhood as far as you can remember through your adult years, you know, into the time that you got married. And you got to remember what Christmas traditions that you grew up with. Once you get married, you know, you have a spouse, and that spouse came from a family that had traditions as well, and you have to blend those Christmas traditions together. And so what did you do? What kind of new traditions did you make up with your family? This is what this tag is all about. So I'm going to start here by just saying that I am from Ohio originally. I was born and raised there. I was born in Akron, Ohio. We moved to Washington, D.C. for a short period of time while I was growing up. Then we went back to Ohio, and I did the majority of my growing up was in Youngstown, Ohio, which is Northeast Ohio. And what can I tell you about Northeast Ohio? Northeast Ohio, because it's up there by Lake Erie, we get lots of lake effect snow. I mean, as soon as they start, you know, giving a forecast from Cleveland, and all that snow that Cleveland's going to get is going to swoop on down where we lived. And we didn't always have a white Christmas. It was very rare not to have a white Christmas. Pretty basically, white Christmas was all the time because, again, you get all the lake effect snow. Even if it didn't snow on Christmas, say it snowed like a couple days before, or it snowed a week before, it would be so cold at that time that the snow was still on the ground. So, like I said, you pretty basically had a white Christmas. So most of my Christmases from growing up, I just remembered a blanket of white snow and snow falling out of the sky. We had a couple Christmases where we had blizzards as well. So I'm going to start with my childhood. I'm going to tell you about both sides of my family, my mom's side, my dad's side. Both sets of grandparents were very big on family and family being together. Family was extremely important. Family was to get together as often as possible, and that's just how it was. And my dad's mom, my grandmother, she pretty basically insisted that you come home for Christmas. If you want to take a vacation, you know, you want to go to Hawaii on vacation, that's fine. You plan it at a different time of the year with 1 week's vacation, your other week vacation, you're coming home for Christmas. That was pretty basically my grandmother's mentality. She insisted everybody was home for Christmas. And so all of my Christmases up until even I was married, I just remember all my family being together and my family coming home. So let's start back even with early memories in my childhood. I just remember, well, first of all, we would have Christmas at our home, and depending whether it was, you know, before Christmas, like a couple days before Christmas, Christmas Eve, maybe even Christmas Day, and then we'd stay at relatives for the couple days after. It just depended how the calendar was going that year, is when we had our Christmas, because then we would go to Akron. That's where my family lived, my dad's side, and my mom's side lived in Cuyahoga Falls, which is a suburb of Akron, and my mom's sister lives also in Akron. So when my grandparents moved out of their home into one of those senior citizens apartment complexes, then we started having Christmas over at my aunt's house. So anyway, we were in Akron most of the time. So we would have Christmas at our house, and as soon as we were done opening packages and so forth, we carried everything up to our rooms, got dressed. Our suitcases were already packed from the day before. and we headed out the door. We had to get to my grandmother's house. And as soon as you pulled in the driveway, it was so wonderful because your cousins, your aunts, uncles, everybody's so happy to see you. They're coming running outside. You got your coat on, but they don't have their coats on, and you're standing out there in the snow, hugging and kissing. They're helping you bring in the presents that you brought and the suitcases and all that fun stuff. So we'd go inside my grandmother's house, and my aunt always decorated the tree just so beautiful. A lot of times presents were about a third way, halfway up of the tree. Seriously, that you'd only see like the top part of the tree sticking out, because it was a large family, and some of my aunts liked to buy everybody 2 gifts. And so everybody got at least 1 gift from every person, whatever, every family member, whatever. And then sometimes you'd get, from certain aunts, you'd get like 2 gifts. So there was a lot of presents. And after we would eat dinner, usually is when we'd come in the evening, and we would open our Christmas gifts. And then the next morning when we'd get up, my aunts, they had a stocking for everybody. And my grandmother, she sewed, and she was a good seamstress, and she made stockings for everybody. And these things were huge. I mean huge, because regular stockings, you couldn't put everything in there. And my aunts collected stuff all through the year, and every one of us grandkids, we got a stocking. So we'd come down, and these big massive stockings were just stuffed full of stuff. And then we'd have a big breakfast. Sometimes we'd stay up until lunch, but then we'd have to leave, and then we'd have to go to my mom's family and spend time with that side of the family and the cousins. And the adults were always playing cards, and us kids were usually, if we weren't playing cards, we were playing board games all the time. And then we'd have a big dinner there, and my aunt and my mom had Christmas cookies. They'd bring all the Christmas cookies out and everything, and then we would open gifts. We wouldn't spend the night there, because relatives from South Carolina that would come up to visit, they stayed with my aunt, and then we would just go back to my dad's parents' house. And so then we got to see those cousins, aunts, and uncles again. And then we'd spend another night, and then get up again, have breakfast and that sort of thing. And then we would go back over one more time to see my mom's side of the family. And then usually from there we'd go home. But one year we were there, we had a blizzard, and we were trying to leave to go home, and the roads were just a mess with snow. I mean, you couldn't drive, and we were waiting for snowplows to come. But the snowplows were getting other parts of the city, and they weren't going down my aunt's street. We couldn't get out, and so we got snowed in. And by the following day, we couldn't even leave in the morning. I think the first time that this happened, we got trapped there till like late morning. But another year it happened where we had a blizzard, and it just kept snowing. The snow just wouldn't stop, and we ended up staying there all the way into the evening. And finally they came and they plowed the roads, and we left to go home. They were trying to get us to stay another night, but we couldn't, because my dad had to go back to work. That was the thing. So, but that's how our Christmases worked. But let me just share a little bit now about like over at my dad's mom's house. My aunts, they always would bring cookies. My mom would bring Christmas cookies that they made. My Aunt Jean, she made the most beautiful sugar cookies. They were just gorgeous. Now when people decorate, sugar cookies, they just use like the royal icing, and they do all kinds of designs and stuff, which is nice. It's pretty. But sugar cookies, I'm talking about having like the colored sugars on the cookies itself. See, my aunt, she could do all that designing and everything and use all the different colors. Like she did Santas, and the Santas had, the black suits. He had the white ruffle, and she used fine coconut on that. The red pants, she'd do the black belt. She would even do like the yellow for, the square to make like the gold part of the buckle on the belt. I mean, she was just meticulous in everything that she did. She made the most beautiful sugar cookies. And it was my aunt who taught me when I got older how she did that. And one thing I would ask her, I said, how is it that like your red is so red? When me and mom make sugar cookies and we're using red on there, you could see like the white frosting through there. She said, because you have to color the frosting. That's how she did it. That was her trick. So like the green Christmas trees were so green and so pretty, and the reason why is because she colored the frosting green and then she put the green sugars on top of it, and so it was just a pretty beautiful green. But everybody loved her Christmas cookies, and all my aunts that brought cookies, you know, we all loved them. We would go upstairs to the attic. My grandparents finished the attic off, and we would go up there, and there was an old black and white television up there that my cousins had, and we would watch like old Frankenstein movies. I don't know why they put Frankenstein movies on at Christmas, but they did. WUAB, channel 43 out of Cleveland. So if anybody's watching this and you're from Cleveland, and you might remember that channel. Anyway, they would, Sven Gulli, you know, they had that TV host, was Sven Gulli. But anyway, they would play like old like Dracula movies and stuff like that. And we would watch that stuff. And then sometimes like the Christmas Carol, the old black and white Christmas carols would come on, and we would watch that. That's when you were upstairs with the cousins, and then they would be, you know, I don't know, playing Life or some kind of a board game. I'd get bored after a while. I'd go downstairs to see what the adults were doing, and I wanted to go sneak some Christmas cookies. And I'd go downstairs, and the adults would all just be talking, and it would be festive and wonderful. And the television would be on, and they had like local school choirs and church choirs from all over the city. They would get to, and Canton too, I think, because Canton's and Barberton's really close to Akron, and they get all these choirs, and it was just like a big musical thing for, you know, several hours in the evening, and it was just all old Christmas carols and just pretty singing and everything. And every year my grandmother made sure that that was on, and so it was nice because you had all the music in the background without having to get the albums out or whatever, and everybody's chit-chatting and so forth. Some people are over in the dining room at the table talking and doing whatever, and so it was really fun. I enjoyed that very much. That's on my dad's side of the family. And then, oh, well, let's talk about traditions. Okay, so what kind of traditions? Well, my grandmother, she was part English. Her father was English descent. He wasn't born in England. It might have been his parents, but because if his parents or whatever, anyway, he was very English, and he liked English food. And English food compared to American food, sometimes, well, it's different. Let's just put it that way. Okay, so my grandmother, she liked making giblet gravy. I don't like giblet gravy. Nobody in the family liked giblet gravy. My aunt and maybe another aunt, they tolerated giblet gravy. And my grandmother, whenever she'd make it, she'd get upset because nobody would eat the gravy. And we kept telling her, leave the giblets out because we don't like it. But she made mincemeat pie, because mincemeat pie, that is something that I even like too. I love mincemeat pie. But I like mincemeat pie, the newer version, where it's the raisins and the currants, and you put the suet in, and that's not, it's like a fat, it's not meat or anything, but you need that to get like the meatier flavor or whatever. So it's like, you know, mincemeat and whatever kinds of things that they put in there. I love mincemeat pie. It was my dad's favorite pie. But one year, my grandmother, she wanted to do it the English way. I mean, like the old English way, where you actually put the beef in it and everything. And so we all, you know, had a little bit of that, and it was kind of like we pushed this pie aside. And any time that you did not like anything that she made, she kind of got upset, because she really was a good cook. But it's like, but don't do that. Don't do stuff to our food, you know, because we're Americans. We don't eat mincemeat pie like that. We don't want our mincemeat pie like that. We don't want giblet gravy or any of that kind of thing. I know Americans will eat giblet gravy too, but most Americans don't. Something else that she would do, like she would have chutney, and chutney's okay. Sometimes it's an acquired taste because some chutneys just have a real strong, tangy flavor, like vinegary, you know. It's an acquired flavor of a taste. Let's just put it that way. But she would make cranberry sauce, and she would make it the English way, you know, kind of like when she would make her orange marmalade and put like the orange rind in it. And she didn't do it like orange zest that we do now. She did like orange rind, not the white bitter part, but you know, the thicker orange part. And it's okay, like if it's a zest or if it's in, you know, very small pieces, but it's kind of like she julienned her, if you know what that is in cooking. It's very thinly sliced. She julienned it, but the pieces were just too big. So then when you would bite into it, you know, who wants to bite into an orange rind? Nobody does, you know, because it's it can be bitter, you know. So anyway, but it's just things like that. You know, she would just throw in her English recipes, which, like I say, English cooking is good. Some things, but that's just because as Americans we're not used to it. And I'm sure that if English people came over here and ate like all the stuff that we ate, you know, they probably wouldn't, you know, like everything either. So anyway, but that's that for my dad's side of the family. Tradition was, you know, you had giblet gravy, you had well, cranberry sauce, you know, we all have it, but it was like the English version of it. You know, she'd have with your biscuits, or not biscuits, but rolls and stuff that are on the table, and then she'd have chutney and stuff, and she would make lots of pies. We'd have the mincemeat pie, that was a big one, and pumpkin pie, and I think they do like apple pie and cherry pie. So that was that, and then a big breakfast in the morning. So on my mom's side of the family, the adults were always playing cards. My grandfather loved to play cards, and they mostly played rook. They liked that, and they would play hearts. That was another big thing that they would play. They'd, I think, play rummy once in a while or whatever. It was mostly hearts and rook. There was a lot of laughter that came out of there, lots of shouting, you know, when, you know, certain persons lost, like my grandfather. He never liked losing, but he was always fun about it. And us kids, we would always just be playing. We'd play board games. We'd just sometimes go up to my cousin's room, and when it was at my grandparents' house, we'd go up to a bedroom and we'd just sit there on the floor and just talk to each other about, you know, what had we been doing, how school was going, any new friends we made, or whatever. You'd just talk and just have a nice time with your cousins. It didn't matter whether it was at my grandparents' house or when we moved it over to my aunt's house. We always went outside too. And so it was always the snowball fighting and, you know, making snow angels, going sledding, you know, doing all that kind of fun thing too. And my grandmother, she was never into cards. She was the only one that didn't play cards. Let me tell you about when we were young and it was at her house. She had one of those little organs. I forget what they're called. It was like a small box, and some of them that you could get, they had the legs on them so you could sit and play. And they had little, well, they had the keyboard part of it, but then they had these white buttons and black buttons. They were the chord buttons, and you'd push the button and you would play. I don't know if you guys remember what those are, but my grandmother had one of those, and she played it really good. And she would sing. So sometimes it was Christmas songs, sometimes it was hymns and that sort of thing. But she would sit and play the organ and call all of us kids over, and she would sing or have us sing with her. My mom and one of my other aunts, after a while, they'd give up, you know, on the cards, and they'd had enough. The guys, they seriously, my grandfather and my dad was really bad with it too, with the cards, and my uncles, though, they would sit there and play cards seriously from the moment that you walked in the door. As soon as we walked in the last person, whether it was us or another aunt and her family, whoever was the last person that walked in, my grandfather was getting up out of the chair. All right, everybody's here now. Okay, let's go to the kitchen. And there they go. It's like my grandfather's like he was jockeying in position to get ready to go in that kitchen to go play cards, because my grandfather lived to play cards. So anyway, that's what they would do. They take breaks and things like that. They always had Coke bottles. This is a big thing, because this is going to play a part into our traditions. My mom's side of the family were big Coke drinkers, and remember the big glass bottles? I think they were 16-ounce bottles, and then they had the smaller 8-ounce bottles as well. But they had the big pop bottles, and we call it pop where we're from. It's pop. Some people call it soda, but anyhow, even when you'd come in, and when we moved Christmas over to my aunt's house, my Uncle Jim, as soon as you come in, you know, he's giving everybody kisses and it's fine, and he'd come to all of us kids, you want some pop? And that was his big thing. He just couldn't wait to go open a bottle of pop and give it to all of us, and because all kids like pop, right? So that was always fun too. So that's pretty basically, you know, the gist of how it was growing up, and the exchanging gifts. Everybody got gifts, and it was just a wonderful time of being together with your family. So, okay, so now what about Christmas with my family? All right, we've lived in Ohio. We were married probably about 4 years, 4 years, and then my husband got a job transfer to Virginia, and then we lived there for 7.5 years, and we left there and we went, my husband changed companies, got a better job offer, and we went to Illinois, to Chicago, and we were there for 11 years, and then we moved out here to PA. And it's with the same company, but my husband transferred out this way. So we've kind of, you know, lived out of state and kind of around from everybody. My in-laws, they lived in Texas when we were first married, and about 1994, I think they moved to Virginia because we were still there at that time. And then my parents, of course, were in Ohio. So we tried to alternate it, you know, Christmas with, the first 2 Christmases, my in-laws insisted that we go to Houston, and so we spent our first 2 Christmases with them. When it came to the 3rd Christmas, they wanted to spend Christmas with us again, and I had to say, listen, I have a family too. I have to, you know, spend time with my family at Christmas. And so then we went and we spent Christmas at my parents' house, but then we went to Akron, because, you know, we still did that even though the grandkids were growing up. We did that until we just couldn't do it anymore because of grandkids having kids and schedules and stuff, that we couldn't do it anymore. But anyway, so we spent then that following Christmas with my family, but then after that, then it was my husband's family wanting to come again, and we would have to fight almost to get some time to have Christmas with my own family. And finally, after a while, I said, forget it, you know. My in-laws, at this point, we had moved to Illinois, and they came to see us. I think 1 or 2 Christmases we went to Virginia, but that's a long drive. That was like 16-hour drive from there to there with all these kids and pets and everything. And so it was easier for my grandparents to come to our house. So that's what they started to do. And even when we moved here, they came here, and then my father-in-law passed away. So what we did, as far as our Christmas traditions, everybody gets a Christmas gift, even when we're getting together, like whether it was with my family or my in-laws, you know, we all exchange gifts. Christmas is not Christmas in our family without the sugar cookies and having the sweet table with all the different Christmas cookies and candies and stuff. Now, last year and this year, I really didn't do the Christmas baking that I normally do, but I would bake sometimes 12 to 15 different types of Christmas cookies and candies. So, our Christmas Eve, we used to have a big dinner on Christmas Eve, and it was usually cabbage rolls or brioche. And my father-in-law liked cabbage rolls. I mean, he loved my cabbage rolls. And every time that they came to visit, when they would come up usually in May to visit as well, he always insisted that I make cabbage rolls. He just loves my cabbage rolls. So we switched over from Brajol to that. And then they started playing the Christmas Story, you know, Red Ryder BB Gun. Remember, they would put it on, I think it was on TBS when they first put it on, and they only played it like a couple different times, but everybody likes it so much that they do it on the 24-hour loop, where it's just, you know, repeats in that 24-hour period. And we quit doing our big Christmas Eve dinner, which was traditional for us. And it was traditional for us growing up at my grandmother's house. But I decided to start doing appetizers instead, and finger foods and little sandwiches. And I would make a big spread. We'd put it in the kitchen. Everybody would just come and help themselves, and I'd have Christmas plates, Christmas napkins. And remembering my Uncle Jim with the Coke bottles, everybody got the glass Coke bottles with the Santa Claus on it. When I was growing up, they didn't have Santa Claus. It was just the regular Coke bottle, but that's where we do the Coke bottles. We still do it. And then I'd bring cookies in like those two-tiered cookie things. I'd usually bring that over to our family room coffee table, and I'd set cookies on there so that we wouldn't have to go back into the kitchen. We'd just sit there and eat, you know, our food, and then snack all night on cookies and that sort of thing. And usually we watched that movie like twice, and then people start heading off to bed. So after everybody would go to bed, I would still be up because I was the one that would put the gifts under the tree. Harry would help me sometimes, but especially like when the kids were little, I would have him, you know, man the fort, so to speak, make sure all the kids stayed in bed when they hear us moving around or hear packages or whatever, so they wouldn't come out of their rooms. Josiah caught us one time. When we lived in Virginia, we had a storage space that was underneath our steps, but you had to go underneath the steps, but then it turned and there was still a big storage space back over there. And I used to put all the kids' Christmas things. I would wrap it as soon as I bought it when they were in school, and then I would hide it back there, and then we'd have to pull everything out to get back to the packages. So he heard us one night because his room was right next door, and he came out, "What are you doing?" He saw us carrying the packages upstairs. I was just like, "Go to sleep, go to sleep. You're not supposed to be up right now." And he does remember it because he told me just even not too long ago. "I remember that time I saw you and Dad underneath the steps pulling the presents out." But so anyway, yeah, so I was the one mostly that would pull the packages out, so Harry made sure everybody stayed in bed, because you do hear the ruckus and movement, and the kids don't always go to sleep right away because they're all excited about presents. I've even had some years where, especially Josiah, and maybe one or two other kids at times, but mostly Josiah, seriously would stay awake all night long. All night long. I'd go in their room to check on them, you know, and they'd be wide awake. It's like, "Go to sleep." "I can't," because they would just get so excited for the gifts and so forth. So, so that's just the main thing. That's the tradition with us, that I'm the one pretty basically that does the presents under the tree. Okay, so let's talk about, you guys know about my nutcrackers. I've always loved the Nutcracker Suite, the ballet, and they've turned it into several different movies, and I used to watch it when I was growing up, and I always loved the Nutcracker. And they never had any nutcrackers out. Sometimes you'd see it at store decorations, but they never had nutcrackers that you could buy. And we were living in Virginia at the time. This was the early 1990s, maybe 1990, 91, something like that. And I was over at CVS, and they had, I think, like 6 different styles of nutcrackers. So he really liked the nutcrackers too, but by the time that I went back to CVS, some of the other styles of the nutcrackers, they didn't have any more of them. But the following year, they got nutcrackers back again, and they even added another style or two. And that's what started our nutcracker collection. So every year I keep saying, we have enough nutcrackers, I'm not going to buy any more nutcrackers. But when you're out and about, you see a nutcracker that catches your eye, "Oh, I want to have that one too." And so we're buying at least one nutcracker. This year I was very good. I did not buy any nutcrackers this year. However, Josiah, look what he got. He bought a nutcracker. Here we go. So we have another nutcracker. And this is a nutcracker from Germany. I do have some nutcrackers that they came from Germany, but I've gotten them over at Disney World, at Epcot in the countries, and so over at Germany. Germans are very big on Christmas. And I collect the nutcrackers sometimes when I'm there, and even the smokers, and I've gotten smokers at some other different places as well. Smokers, I've shown those before. They're made out of wood, and their mouths are small, and they got like a little pipe in it, and you put an incense thing in the back of it, and the incense, as it's going up into the smoker, it comes out the hole of the mouth, so it looks like the guy's smoking his pipe. And then it gives like a nice fragrance. And a lot of times it's a Christmas fragrance or something Christmassy, you know, different fragrances that they have. Now this nutcracker, it is a nutcracker from Germany. And they're quite expensive when you buy them from Germany. When we were living in Ohio, before we moved to Virginia, my next door neighbor, Becky, she said to me one year, she said, you know something, Sandy, I think I'm going to get a second Christmas tree this year, and I'm going to do it where it's just all red lights. And as a matter of fact, my main Christmas tree in my living room, I'm going to do all blue lights on there with blue ornaments. And that's what she did. So she had a blue Christmas tree and a red Christmas tree. And the way that she decorated it, it was actually really nice. We went to Virginia, and I only just had one Christmas tree there. But when we moved to Chicago, my house was a pretty big house. We have had a Victorian. It wasn't an old Victorian. I love Victorian houses. And it wasn't an old Victorian. It was actually a brand new house we had built. This one subdivision, they were building Victorian houses. And so we built that house, and it was very spacious. And I told my husband about the first or second Christmas that we were there, I said, I'm getting another Christmas tree, and I'm putting it in my dining room. And he's like, what are you going to put a big tree in there for? I said, well, we won't do a big one. We'll just get a small one. And that's the dining room tree that I have in my dining room now, which you guys have seen. It's a 6-foot tree. And I have to still put lights on it because they didn't have pre-lit trees when we bought that tree. And I wanted it in my dining room because I just remembered every time we were eating Christmas dinner over at my grandmother's house, there was the white tree, and I just loved it. And where my chair was, like, the tree was right there. And it's like, oh, Christmas in the dining room. It was just so cozy because it hadn't been heard of, and whoever did that, you know, and I just love that. Well, another Christmas or two goes by, and I'm like, you know, I think I'm gonna get another Christmas tree. I'm gonna put it in the living room. And Harry was like, all right, I'll let you do that. He goes, one more tree, but 3 trees, Sandy, that's enough, okay? So then we ended up moving here. And, well, no, before we moved, I got a 4-foot fiber optic tree, and I had that upstairs. And then when we moved here, this house is even bigger than my house was in Chicago. And you can see the foyer tree here. We have a big foyer. So it was like when we first bought this house, I said to my husband, I pointed out the spot right here, and I said, a lovely Christmas tree would look beautiful right there, and there's plenty of room. A Christmas tree by the staircase. How wonderful is that? That's going to look so nice. So then he allowed that. So the living room tree, dining room tree, the family room tree, that's the way it was in Illinois. And then we added this one here. But then there was a space upstairs in the hallway, so it's like, I gotta get another Christmas tree for up there. And then I got the 4-foot tree for the office, and then we had another smaller tree that we kept on the mantle of a fireplace in the bedroom, but I've since moved it now into the bathroom and bought another little tree for in there. So that's why I have all these Christmas trees. And my husband was like, no more Christmas trees. He goes, you keep collecting all these Christmas trees and all these ornaments for the trees. I said, that's right. And you're the one that insists on keep collecting nutcrackers. And so anyway, I told my husband, I said, as long as you want to collect nutcrackers, I'm going to do my whole Christmas tree thing. So anyway, that's why we have all the trees that we have. That's why we have all the nutcrackers that we have. Those have just been traditions that we've just incorporated since we've been married. Again, some of the same traditions we incorporated from like my growing up, like again, all the Christmas cookies, the sugar cookies, having the big family dinner like at Christmas Eve, but now we do like the appetizers. It's still the family together, you know, we're watching TV, we're all together. And the Coke bottles, have to have the Coke bottles. My Uncle Jim, he started that one. Unfortunately for my husband, he is an only child, and his family, he has a very large family. In his dad's family, my father-in-law was one of 6 children, and my mother-in-law was one of 7 children. It's a huge family, and my husband has lots of cousins, and they don't see each other. They don't spend holidays together. They just never did. It's really sad that you could have such a big family like that, and then people even moving out of state and so forth, getting work other states and so forth, and then they just lose touch with each other. My husband has cousins. He hasn't even seen them except outside of funerals, you know, when a relative dies. He would tell me we'd go to a funeral and he'd say, I haven't seen that cousin since they were 2. I don't even know them, you know. And it's really sad. And that's what makes me appreciate my grandparents, both sets of my grandparents. They never wanted to see that happen where the families all split apart. They demanded that the families got together and they spent the holidays together. My mother's mother, my grandmother, she's one of 12 children. They did not get together for Christmas, but they got together every summer. It was mandatory every summer. They drove down to Georgia. My grandfather is one of 5 children, and his family's close. My father's mother, she's one of 9 children, and they all started moving out of state and all over, but they always kept in touch with each other by letters, by phone calls, and they would try to visit once a year, once every other year, going to each other's homes and visiting. And then my grandfather, he's one of, I think, 5 children, so a lot of kids, and they knew what it was to be together with family and to make sure that the importance of family getting together at least once a year, that you do it. And what better time than at Christmas time? Like I said, my mom's mom, they got together in the summertime. That's what worked out best for them. But the holidays are always a very nice time for families to get together and be together. And so anyway, I'm going to end this video here. If anybody wants to share about your Christmases growing up, what your traditions were growing up, how you incorporated some of those things into your own Christmases now with your family, please feel free to share away, because I tag everybody in this video, and hope to hear, you know, some of your traditions. I will see you next time. Merry Christmas. Bye.